Hi there guys, a bit of an unusual video for you today. Today we're going to look at whether you can fire the 7.62 by 51 NATO round in a Mosin Nagant, which is 7.62 by 54 rimmed. And this is sort of the inspiration for this was some events that happened many years ago when I was just a young fella. And we used to go to the big rifle range on Sundays, and one of the guys that used to show up, he had an old M44 Mosin, and he used to shoot surplus 7.62 by 51 ammo in it, which you might think is a strange thing to do, but back then there was basically no 7.62 54 around on the market. This would have been like 1985, 6, 7, somewhere around there, and you really just couldn't find any economical 7.62 by 54. You could get Norma, and that was about it. And you might find the odd little bit of surplus, but it was pretty thin on the ground. So this young guy used to shoot 7.62 51 out of his Mosin, and he never seemed to have any particular catastrophic problems. So I got to thinking about that the other day, and I did some looking online, and apparently in some places in the world where there have been shortages of the correct ammo, you know, conflict zones, people have been known to shoot the NATO round in the big Russian chambering. So you'd wonder, well, how exactly would that work? Well, basically, if you look at the two rounds, the 7.62 NATO is more slender, it's got a smaller case head diameter, and of course it is rimless, whereas the Russian round is rimmed. However, the overall length of the rounds, the 7.62 51, is obviously a bit shorter, but the most important thing is the case shoulders are at roughly similar distances from the breech face. They're not exactly the same. In fact, they're far enough away that basically firing the shorter NATO round amounts to gross headspace in the Russian chamber. So this is something that I'm not going to recommend that anybody try. I'm just going to show it to you so you can see the outcome for yourself, and you won't have to do it for yourself to see what the results are. Anyway, this was something that was on the back burner for a long time, and I didn't want to risk a decent rifle, so I managed to put together this rifle from bits and pieces. A buddy of mine had a barreled action which had been previously molested. Somebody had cut the bolt handle off and put the turn down bolt on it, and they had drilled and tapped it for this scope mount. So he was kind enough to let me borrow the barreled action, and I put the scope on it. I had this is a, oh, by the way, the action is a 9130 action. It's a full-length rifle, and the stock that I put it into is a chopped down M44 carbine stock, so it's quite a Frankenstein of a gun. The barrel was a little bit on the dark side, a bit pitted, but with substantial cleaning it improved more than I thought it would. Anyway, we're going to take this rifle and a couple of different types of 7.62 NATO spec ammo out to the range. The first stuff I'll be shooting will be brass cased, basically M80 ball equivalent, and the second stuff that I'm going to try is Chinese surplus M80 ball equivalent, but it is steel case. So let's head out to the range and we'll see what happens. And by the way, I'm not going to shoulder fire this at first. I have a test rig set up so I can remotely fire it so that if anything goes really horribly wrong, I won't get injured. Anyway, let's head off to the range. Alright, here's our test setup. We have our Mosin clamped and a set of barrel blocks with a portable clamp clamped down to the shooting table. And very high tech, we have a piece of string tied to the trigger, so this is what we're going to go with. Let's see how it works out. Alright, here's our first test round. This is 147 grain full metal jacket M2 ball equivalent NATO spec ammo. So we'll give this a try. Motor in the chamber. Close the bolt. And see what happens. Alright, one shot off. And our cartridge is in the chamber there. I'm going to have to get a cleaning rod to give it a poke out. Alright, poke this empty out. Certainly wasn't stuck in there, just sitting in the chamber. And you can see there's almost a case head separation there. See that bright line? It did go off. And the chronograph, which is 8 feet in front of the muzzle, says we got 2,718 feet per second. So that's pretty close to standard sort of speed for that load. Make sure we're still lined up here. And we'll try another one. There we go, other than dropping it on the ground. And there's the second one. Swelled out as expected, but not quite as sharp of a line as the first one. Chronograph reading on that was 25:38. Alright, let's make sure we're lined up again. That's pretty good. And the chronograph on that one says 27:39. And there's a look at the cartridge case. That one doesn't look too bad either. Swelled out, but we don't have that incipient case head separation line going on there. Alright, let's try shoulder firing this now that it seems to have survived a bunch of the other stuff. $26.96. Look too terrible. $27.39. 713. Alright, here are 4 shots at 100 yards. The Chinese steel case 7.62-51 fired at the Mosin Nagant. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, considering that it's quite an undersized bullet, it's better than I thought it would do, actually. Alright, we're back home from the range. A fairly successful trip, in my opinion. And I figured it'd be better to look at the fired cartridge cases and such here at home where there's less wind and we have more time. So we'll start off, we'll look at the brass cased cases first. And if we can get the camera to focus, you can see that these cases are right on the verge of case head separation. This one's actually slightly separated. There's a black line there, so this one has clearly failed right there, and it's, you know, there's quite a significant swelling to the case just above the solid web. Let's have another look at another one. Some of these survive better than others. So there's a second one, but there are bright lines around the bases of these cases. You can see, hopefully, the that line right there. Some, like I said, are worse than others. This one's not too bad. I was trying to read the chronograph numbers off as I shot these. Some of them were higher speed than others, and they're the ones that seem to have suffered the worst deformation. That one's not too terrible. So there's a bit of a mixed bag. This one's bad. You can see the bright line there. That is just on the very cusp of ripping off. So that one could have, had that been a little bit hotter, that one might have let go. So yeah, that one's very sketchy. This obviously points out why you should not try to do this yourself. This is just sort of to show you what would happen if somebody stupid enough like me tried to do it. There's another one with a line through it. You can see the bright line. Almost a case head separation, but not as bad as that really terrible looking one we saw. Come on, focus. Okay. And there's the final one. So all of these swelled up, as you can see, quite a bit above the solid web, but none of them completely failed, although we saw there was one that was on the verge of failing and another one that was very close to it as well. Those were all fired remotely. I didn't feel comfortable firing anything like that with me holding on to the rifle. So then I tried some this Chinese surplus stuff, and people have taken me to task for calling it Chinese surplus NATO ammo. I know the Chinese do not use 7.62 NATO. They're obviously not in NATO. However, they do make ammo for anybody who wants it, and one of the calibers they make is 7.62-51 NATO, so this is their equivalent, which they will sell to other countries, and I think this came from a third-party country. Anyway, it's surplus stuff. I have tried it. It's actually pretty good shooting ammo, this particular batch, and it is steel cased. So after firing a few of these steel case rounds remotely, you can see how much less deformed they are. Steel cases are quite strong. So I fired a couple, and they looked so good that it gave me the confidence to fire a group from the shoulder. So, you know, they are still swelled out a bit, but they don't have that really dangerous stretching and, you know, the signs of case head separation. So these ones held up quite a bit better than the brass case ones did. And this is not real mild ammo either. If you fire it out of a proper 7.62 firearm, it gives you pretty good speed. It's pretty much up to spec as far as velocity goes. So there's the results of that particular test. You will note that in the video title I have called it 7.62 NATO, not 308 Winchester. 308 Winchester is a whole different animal as far as this kind of thing would go. The cartridge cases in 308 Winchester can be significantly thinner, and they can be loaded to significantly higher pressures. And where we see a stressed case which is held up, you would almost certainly see a failure with 308 Winchester, especially some of the hot loadings. So I would not recommend anybody ever trying .308 Winchester commercial ammo in a Mosin. I wouldn't recommend that they try 7.62 NATO for that matter either. So this is more of an experiment than anything else. But I thought some of you guys might find it kind of interesting to see what would happen. And it was interesting to see that the group that I fired with the Chinese ammo actually showed up on target, and for an old, rusty, worn-out Mosin barrel, it did better than I thought it would, considering that's a .308 diameter bullet in a .311, .312 barrel. So the fact that they landed in a group on the target was more than I had any right to expect. Anyway, I hope you found that to be somewhat interesting or entertaining. And as always, your comments and ratings will be appreciated. And if you like this content, please feel free to subscribe, and we'll try to put out content on a more regular basis. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and have a good one.